And now for something completely different.
What is going on, YouTube? Yes, we are going to do something completely different on this channel. Something I've been wanting to do for quite a while now, which is talking about flat earth beliefs. Hopefully this will be a weekly thing. I would like to call Flat Earth Fridays. Right now it's Friday. It could be any day for you though. I don't even know when I'm going to edit this thing, but we'll try to get these out pretty much every week. If you want to get into kind of like the meat and potatoes of the video, go ahead and check out later. I'll put some markers in the description. But I do want to explain it really quick why I've been wanting to get into this. So I'm quite the space enthusiast. So I'm on a lot of different Facebook groups and things like that. And every time something is posted about space, there's always a chunk of laughing emojis, and you don't think much of it. But then you really start looking at the comments, and it was kind of alarming to me how many people didn't believe any of it. And a lot of people believing that the earth was flat. Now, for a long time, I mean, I've heard of this. I thought it was a very niche group. I even thought there were a lot of trolls out there. But then the more I looked into it, like there are a lot of people who believe this. In fact, it turns out some of my friends and family actually believe in this. So I've been wanting to kind of dig into the things that they discuss. And we're going to springboard this by highlighting some of these flat earth memes that I see in some of the social media groups that I'm in. And these memes are quite literally just doubt seeds, right? You hear that phrase, seeds of doubt. That's exactly what they are. There are these memes that if you're not very savvy on how the world works, physics and things like that, and if you really don't appreciate the sheer size of things and understand the size of the earth and the galaxy and things, you're going to see these memes and automatically think, wait a minute, yeah, that's a good point, I never thought of that. And then before you know it, you're starting to question things around you. You're starting to question things that pop up. You're like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. But here's the crazy thing about these memes. When they post these in these groups, there are a trillion people who like explain away the reality behind these memes or these conundrums, right? And usually the poster is long gone. They don't ever come back to really like be part of the debate or anything like that. So it truly is, it seems like people just kind of sowing these seeds of doubt. You start to get enough of these in your head and you really start to just question everything, right? So I like to look at some of these as a very amateur astronomist, I guess you could say. I've been dabbling in astrophysics for pretty much my whole adult life, something that's always interested me. So I'm very familiar. And later, hopefully, we'll get some guests on this channel. For example, my niece, who is literally a rocket scientist. She is an engineer in the Air Force building space rockets and things like that. So it'll be really cool to have her on. My brother literally is a director for the defense satellites. He's retired Air Force, but now he kind of does the same thing he did before, working for Lockheed Martin. And he's a director and he oversees satellite launches and oversees them in space and things like that. So it'd be really cool to talk to these people on the channel. And I'm hoping also to get some flat earth folks on here. I want to talk to you. I want to find out what makes you tick and what it is you believe and why you believe it. And who knows, maybe you can change my mind. I don't know. But I promise to be very respectful and all that, because I understand how this can take root and all of that. And it would just be great to talk to you and just see what's going on. So without further ado, let's get into this week's sample of the flat earth meme. Now, this is what I've been looking at for a while on some of my groups, and it has a lot to do with speed and distance, and basically the orientation of the things that we see in our night sky. And the general meme goes a little something like this. About 6,000 years ago, we basically, I guess, have record of the various constellations. And now today, these constellations match up. Even though it says we've traveled 25 trillion miles, constellations still look the same in the sky. I've seen some similar memes regarding the Georgia Guidestone that basically has a small hole in it, and you can look through and the North Star is always there. And people say, well, how is it that we're flying through space at these incredible speeds, and yet the North Star is still in that same position? It just doesn't make sense. And again, to the average person, you're like, that's a good point. But what I want to do right now is break down what all this means, the sheer size of things, the distance of things, and hopefully it'll help you realize why it is we still see constellations the same way we did a very long time ago. So to kind of start out with a little bit of their fact checking, basically about 3000 BC is when we have the first records of cataloging various constellations. So again, 3000 BC, 6000 is close, right? So right around 5000 years now, it seems like some of the constellations are still in the same spot. But there's a few things that you have to realize about our galaxy, understand why things aren't going to change for quite a while. And here's a few of those things. First of all, 25 trillion miles seems like a lot. But when you look at the math, 1 light year is close to 6 trillion miles. 5.88 trillion miles is 1 light year. So in 6,000 years, yes, we have traveled about 5 light years. Sounds like a lot, right? Next, consider the fact that our nearest neighbor that we have, Alpha Centauri, is about, I think it's between 3 and 4 light years away. So in about that time, 6,000 years, we've traveled the distance to basically our closest neighbor. Okay, so then the next thing you have to consider with all of this is that we only really see our immediate neighbors when we look up in the night sky. Researching a little bit, the farthest star located inside of a constellation is about 7,000 light years. Now again, seems like a lot, right? Pretty far away. But when you consider the fact that our Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across, the diameter of our Milky Way, 100,000 light years across. We are about 26,000 light years away from the center. So we're about halfway out, right? Halfway out from the center. So then the radius would be about 50,000, and then the full diameter of the Milky Way is about 100,000 light years. Next, what we have to consider is that everything is moving around the Milky Way in pretty much the same speed and direction. So yes, we've traveled the distance to our next neighbor, but our neighbors have also been traveling in the same direction at about the same speed. To think about this, to think about an example, my buddies and I remember growing up, I had a 25-foot above ground pool, and we used to love to make whirlpools. We would always, no matter what we did, we always ended up making these whirlpools, and we get in and we just kind of go around in a circle. And after a while, everything would swirl, right? You could bring your feet up and you would just go, you would try to go against it and it would push you back, but everything's moving kind of in this whirlpool pattern. And it's very much the same thing with the Milky Way galaxy. Everything is moving together in kind of this whirlpool fashion. So again, let's recap. In 6,000 years, we've traveled about 5 to 6 light years. Our nearest neighbor is 3 to 4 light years away. Everything's moving in the same direction, and we can really only see our immediate neighbors, the farthest being about 7,000 light years away. What that means, now keep up with the maths here and let me know if I got anything wrong, but I spent a lot of time working on this. What that means is that in 6,000 years, we've only traveled 0.004% our total trip around the Milky Way galaxy. You get a very similar answer when you divide 6,000 into 250 million years, which is what it takes for us to complete a full orbit around the Milky Way galaxy. Think about that for a second. We haven't even gone 1%, in fact, nowhere even close, in our path around the Milky Way. In 6,000 years, that's all we've traveled. Meanwhile, all of the stars around us have gone in the same direction. So I did the math. In relation to the pool, if it's 25 foot across, imagine you're a piece of dirt in that pool, and around you is just a bunch of other little, pools aren't always perfectly clean, right? There's little flecks of things and stuff like that. Everything's moving in the same direction, right? So in the time that we're talking here, and you have only traveled 1/2 of a millimeter around that pool. As far as the constellations around you, you could really only see about, or let's even say it's a foot, right? But again, a 25-foot pool, you see a foot of matter moving around, right? So everything's moving the same direction, same speed. You're certainly not seeing things on the other side of the galaxy moving in the opposite direction. And if you did, they moved a half a millimeter, right? So this is why constellations still look the same 6,000 years later. They'll still look the same in a million years, for the most part, I think. I mean, things will change a little bit. I think I read in the article that that North Star will no longer be visible in a few hundred years. But that monument has only been there since the 80s. And people are freaking out that we could still see the North Star through that hole. Okay, so again, you don't have to understand how big things are because I can't understand it. It is truly unfathomable as to how huge the galaxy and our world truly is. And as we go through this, doing this, you're going to see that a lot of the misconceptions come with just not quite understanding how gigantic this world is and everything around us. So again, to recap, why do constellations look the same in 6,000 years? Because we are a speck in a pool that has moved a half a millimeter. You can only see as far as about an inch, and everything has moved the same direction, about a half a millimeter during that time. Okay, so there you have it. Hopefully that helps clear some things up. If you see that meme, you know how to approach it, you know how to look at it. But hopefully I'll be kicking one of these out once a week. We'll probably next be looking at why the Earth is spinning and you don't see it spinning from space, and why we and water and things don't just fly off of it because it's spinning and things like that. That's probably what we'll talk about next. But until then, everybody, please be safe, healthy, and be nice to each other. So let's put that in perspective of that 25-foot above ground pool.